Hello, hello, and welcome in to EnJen to Heart. I'm Jen Lynn, the co-founder of Seeing Your Song, and I am the founder of Unique When You Beauty Norm, and the host of EnJen to Heart. So today is a very special day, one that we celebrate for independence. And sometimes independence for one or many is not independence for others. And that's what I want to talk about today. A little bit about the fact that some independence is not others. So welcome in. Please stick with me throughout this. Please feel free to put your own feelings and opinions and thoughts in the comments, and it's always, as always, and let's have a discussion here. You and I are the fire right beneath the fireworks as we celebrate the 4th of July, Independence Day in the States. We are the mountains, and you, my friends, don't move just the mountains, you move borders, and you redefine the lines that they swore were fixed. We etch new cartographies with the pressure of our breath. You're not here to be climbed. You're not here to be conquered. You're the tectonic whisper beneath history's tremble, the shifting of what was once unquestioned. They said, here is this boundary, and you said, here is the becoming. You carry fault lines in your laughter, and ridges in your rage, altitudes in your silence, and still you do not break, you reshape. So let them try to map you, and let them name your terrain. You already expand beyond the edges of their language, outgrowing every myth that they've used to hold you down. Because you, beloved, are not a monument, you are a movement wrapped in stone, a continent reborn, and wherever you stand, the world adjusts its borders. So today we light a different kind of fire. We speak about what's been buried, and we remember what's been erased through the world and through history. And we rise. July 4th is often called Independence Day. But for most of us, 1776 was not a liberation. It was the beginning of an erasure. The Pilgrims came not for true religious freedom, but to create a religious stronghold. Jamestown was a capitalist venture, not a holy one. And the Constitution wasn't made, nor did it include most people. Women were excluded, Black people were enslaved, indigenous nations were targeted for extinction. The founding fathers were not liberators, they were architects of selective, violent, colonial freedom. And the myth of freedom is not the same as the experience of it. And we've been taught different, right? We've been taught different. But here are some truths. George Washington enslaved over 300 people. Thomas Jefferson enslaved over 600, including his own children. The Three-Fifths Compromise embedded Black erasure into law. Indigenous sovereignty was seen as an obstacle to expansion. The Constitution preserved white, male, elite rule, not universal democracy. And when we fast forward to now, indigenous lands are still being stolen. Right now, with Oak Flat and Line 3, please feel free to look those things up. Children are still in cages. War is still a profit machine, and democracy is still a controlled illusion. These different actors and the same script. So sit with that a moment, please. None of this makes us wrong, and none of this makes our forefathers wrong. Ish. This is not about that. This is about understanding that we have been taught things from one perspective and that there are many perspectives. And for us to move forward as humanity, we have to learn how to realize that some of those things that we've been taught are not correct. And yes, it makes your mind just swell and go, what is happening right now? And it makes you feel so very unsafe. But just stick through, because we can stick through together and do this. Hello, Nick. I'm so glad to see you here. Thank you for coming and sharing part of your holiday with me to learn. So what if revolution wasn't an event, but an inheritance? What if the real Declaration of Independence is still unfolding through us? Right. So in this moment, let's honor the indigenous nations who never signed surrender, the enslaved ancestors who never saw justice, the migrants forced to flee lands and destabilized by the same empire that builds walls. This isn't just a remembrance, it's a resistance, it's a rewriting. I'm the daughter, I am a descendant of the last Comanche chief known as Quanah Parker. Within the own nation, many saw him as a traitor because he saw the value in working with the white man. And many see him as a hero for that as well. We compromise and we adapt to survive. That's what we do. But the truth of the matter of some of the things that happened through our settling, through our liberation, quote unquote, from the English, as some that came to settle when they settle. So this is about imperialism and colonization, and that's what we're talking about today. So when colonization happened, they were fleeing to be able to practice their own very strict, very stringent religion. And they first settled in Holland. And then they were afraid that their descendants were becoming too Dutch. And so they left there and they came to the Americas because they could create the boundaries that they wanted for the very strict religion that they believed in. And then the rich men came and founded the land and offered it to the common man, who was very much so being suppressed in England, to come to America and be unsuppressed, or at least that's what it was that they were told. So the body remembers all of these things. Our bodies remember this. The land beneath our feet remembers this. There is a living, continuous memory. And we carry it within our DNA, just as the trees, just as the soil, just as the mountains do. So I want to talk about a second that. I want to talk about the somatic body and how it remembers the word savage. Why do poor and marginalized communities still support the systems that suppress them and oppress them? And that is because their bodies remember. They remember when to be called uncivilized was a death sentence. They remember when to be labeled savage was justification for great violence. This is a polyvagal response. It's epigenetics. The body craves perceived safety, even if it's in systems that hurt, because it's what is familiar. Trauma alters the nervous system and the identity across generations. Submission becomes survival, compliance became currency, and dissent became dangerous. And so today to rise feels terrifying because the memory of that punishment is cellular. But memory is not destiny, and the body can relearn. There are sacred texts among this world and in this world that have been stolen, rewritten time and time again across religion and belief systems are also colonized. They used the Bible to justify slavery, but the Bible wasn't born in a plantation. They erased the Quran's justice to paint Islam as being violent, but it was born calling for protection of orphans and equity. They weaponized the Vedas to cement caste, but the original Upanishads spoke of cosmic unity. They sanitized Buddhism into commercial stillness, but the Buddha was a revolutionary who rejected hierarchy. Even this day, the Dalai Lama says to have compassionate rage for injustices, those things that you see that shouldn't be happening. The texts are not tools of conquest, they were maps to liberation before empire rewrote them. We can read past those things, and many of us do, to understand the truth of how to love your neighbor, how to coexist, how to treat each other with love and respect and empathy. So, where did it all begin? It didn't start in 1776. It started when humanity chose domination over kinship. The doctrine of discovery in 1493 gave European Christians the divine right to steal land. And Rome created spectacles of torture to reinforce and pour imperial order. Race was invented to justify economic exploitation, and capitalism grew from enslaved labor and stolen gold and stolen bodies and stolen land. And the birth of this system wasn't democracy, it was extraction. So while others watch fireworks, I remember the fire that burned through villages. I honor the dreams that were buried with no name and reclaim the sacred and make it a new ritual. Right? Because I don't move mountains, I move borders. And today, I remember who I really am. Do you? Not a monument, not a movement, not a flag, a flame, not an echo, but a thunder. And I'm not saying that you can't light fireworks. I'm not saying that you can't celebrate a level of liberation. But I don't believe that we're free until we're all free. And I don't believe that we can continue to bury what is happening in the world right now and what happened before that. Right? So the Pilgrims who landed in 1620, they were separatists. They were a radical group who believed in the Church of England was corrupt. And they fled, like I said, to Holland, which was religiously tolerant. And then they didn't like the cultural mixing and they feared their children were becoming too Dutch. And so they came to America, not for religious freedom, but to create a religiously controlled society based on their values. They didn't want pluralism. They wanted purity, their version of that. Jamestown in 1607 was the first permanent English settlement. It was not religious at all. It was a business venture that was funded by the Virginia Company. The Virginia Company came from England. They founded Jamestown, which then later became Virginia. Settlers wanted land and they wanted resources and they wanted profit. And later waves of colonists were driven by the promise of owning land, something that was almost impossible for commoners in Europe. And they still mostly didn't even receive that. The Puritans in Massachusetts Bay Colony banned dissenters like Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williamson. They exiled, punished, and even executed people for believing differently from them. Williams would go on to found Rhode Island, which did and still does champion broader religious freedom even today. The irony is that those who fled persecution often became persecuted themselves. They did not come to build a land of liberty for all. They came to build a stronghold for their own belief system, violently excluding others, indigenous peoples whose lands they seized and spiritual practices they demonized. So, in summary of that, no, most Europeans were not coming to America purely for religious freedom as we define it today. They came for a mix of religious self-determination, but not tolerance, an economic opportunity and land acquisition, social mobility, and sometimes escaping debt or legal trouble. So while the skies light up with the red, white, and blue, I hold space for these truths that never made it to the textbooks. I don't celebrate freedom with fireworks, but I do remember the fires that burned villages to ash and the treaties that were signed in blood and the rivers that carried grief long before they carried commerce. While 1776 marked independence for some, it really was the beginning of erasure. For the indigenous nations whose lands were taken, languages, outlaws, and children were stolen into assimilation. Today, the American Indian tribes are oppressed and depressed and downtrodden by alcoholism, which the English brought. And the American Indian woman, the indigenous woman, is the most highly erased, kidnapped, raped, murdered. In this land that we call free. And for the South and Central Americans, they were brutalized by imperial doctrines disguised as destiny. And for the lives lost in the Middle Passage and those that were chained to soil that was never theirs to till, the earth's original stewards, whose wisdom was called savage, but whose spirits remain unbroken. But let today be a pause, not in gratitude for the conquest, but in the honor of the resistance, the memory, and the breath that still fights to be heard, to the ancestors unnamed by history, but remembered in the marrow of the land. We see you. I see you. You are not collateral and you are not forgotten. You are the cost and you deserve the reckoning. So today, I speak your names without knowing them, and I light candles instead of fireworks, and I celebrate not the birth of a nation, but the ongoing call to truth, to justice, and to repair, because the land is still sacred, and the people are still rising, and the story is still being written by us, by you, and I. There's something else that's fair to say and even necessary to name it very plainly, and that is that the current U.S. administration, despite progressive rhetoric, still operates within the systems of extraction, militarism, expansionism, and supremacy that the founding fathers enshrined in 1776. The architecture looks different, but the blueprints remain hauntingly familiar, so please hear that. The founding fathers didn't birth liberty. They birthed control, freedom for some, slavery, genocide, and disenfranchisement for the rest. And today we see that same selective freedom play of control being played out through border militarization, indigenous land desecration, the mass incarceration, and systemic policing, U.S. foreign policy that props up the apartheid and bombs brown nations, and a Supreme Court that is attacking bodily autonomy and civil rights and democratic processes. This is not just history, this is now. Everything that we've done since the freedom since the Declaration of Independence was written for all of this and everything that we've done as progressives, as evolution has unfolded, is put in these different pieces that say that's not the way we want to be anymore, and we agreed on that, and we agreed on that, and we agreed on that, and there are those that don't. And what they're returning to as what the forefathers meant for this nation is nothing more than authoritarianism and absolute control. And yes, it is time to remember today and to rise. Remember that democracy without justice is just a performance. Remember that celebration without reconciliation is nothing but propaganda. And remember that the US Revolution was never finished. It simply had paused when power felt safe. And now, in 2025, we are standing at another turning point. Just as the forefathers wrote themselves into power, we must write ourselves into liberation. The myth is cracked, the empire is exposed, and the people, especially those long ignored, are remembering their own power. And so, yes, let's rise, but not in blind patriotism, but in reckoning and repair and revolutionary imagination about how we can come together as peoples that are liberated and free, and how we can lift those up that have been oppressed and buried. Because absolutely, today is a day that we celebrate a country that was built on the backs of the oppressed. The same backs that are the same that are oppressed today. That has not changed. And I am not here to cancel. I'm not here to shame. I am simply here to remember together and to rise. And let's be honest that the story we've been told about the birth of this nation was never meant to include everyone. Some came here in chains. Others were already here, stewards of the land, only to be erased, and many fled the violence of empire, only to create it on someone else's soil. The myth goes that it was for religious freedom, but the truth is they came for power, disguised as purity, and now we're watching it happen again. We see it in Gaza. We see it in the corporate greed that's wrapped in the red, white, and blue, and the black and brown lives that are still traded for votes and for headlines. It's still the same blueprint. Say, I don't want to cancel the cookout, but I do want to light a different kind of fire, one that burns through denial, one that forges justice, and one that honors the uncelebrated. In this world today, people are being kidnapped off of the streets. And put in camps, in the modern day concentration camps. In Florida, a concentration camp has been built with alligators in a water moat around it. And they are selling merchandise to celebrate: hats, t-shirts, capitalism on full display. And I celebrate even that, because open your eyes and you will see. And if you see, and if you still choose to hold on to the lie, then I am grateful for knowing where it is that you stand. And I do not understand that decision or that choice, but I support your right to have that decision and choice. I do not support the right to put people in concentration camps with alligators while you stand outside in merchandise and dance and be happy and proud of what it is that you have done and what you are doing, because you think that it's someone else's less than you. And I have been saying it for so long, and I'm going to continue to say it. If we are not present, if we are not speaking up and speaking out, then we are standing on the outside of these concentration camps ourselves. We are putting people in grave danger and misery and suffering and punishment and judgment when we stay silent. Nick, again, thank you so much for being here. History has been buried so many times. Imperialism, power, for control. And it can be confusing. We also have this wonderful, beautiful system inside of our own bodies that tell us through our body, through the feeling in our body, what is right and what is wrong. When we help someone we know, about the law of reciprocity. When we create something beautiful And it resonates with someone we know. And we learn about the law of magnetism, universal laws. When we come together in tragedies like natural disasters, we understand the universal laws. We don't need any book to tell us how to be human, though there is nothing wrong with having books to help us understand how, because we are so far removed from violence, from war, from famine, from torture. And I know your ancestors, and I know mine, because I feel them weep, and I feel them rise up within my own body with wisdom, with compassionate rage. If you don't want to be religious, you don't have to be. Don't want to be spiritual, you don't have to be. You don't have to be any of those things to know how to treat other humans and to recognize when genocide is happening, when control tactics are happening, when brainwashing is happening. So I'm going to read what I started with. And then I'm going to sit in silence for the last minutes with you, with myself, and with the land beneath our feet, in remembrance and in honor of the backs that this country was built on. You are the mountain. And you, my friend, don't move a mountain. You move borders. You redefine the lines they swore were fixed. You etch new cartographies with the pressure of your breath. You are not here to be climbed. You are not here to be conquered. You are the tectonic whisper beneath history's tremble, the shifting of what once was unquestioned. They said, here is the boundary. And you said, here is the becoming. You carry fault lines in your laughter, and ridges in your rage, and altitudes in silence. And still you do not break. you reshape. So let them try to map you. And let them name your terrain. You are already expanding beyond the edges of their language, outgrowing every myth that they used to hold you down. Because you, beloved, are not a monument. You are a movement that is wrapped in stone, a continent reborn. And wherever you stand, the world adjusts its borders. And so in these days, put thought into where it is that you stand, where you step your feet, and walk gently over the past. And through all of the things that you're here to unpack, all of the wounds of the past, the wounds of the present. And you have the ability to keep them from being wounds of the future. Call your representatives. Go strike. March. It was dangerous. It is dangerous, and it will be dangerous. But it changes. It is impactful. And it stops the atrocities that are happening and have happened. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm glad to help, to show you how, to find your representatives, to find the numbers, to find whatever it is, to help you support those that need you to stand as their attorney, those that need you to stand as their voice, as they've been carted into concentration camps that are surrounded by water and alligators and merchandise. The sickening merchandise. Thank you for joining me today on EnJen to Heart to talk about the Continental Independence Day of America, all sides of it. And we'll spend the next 15 minutes in silence. If you have a comment, I will answer it, but I will not speak any further, other than to say congratulations. And we can celebrate the fact that we do have freedoms. We have so many things to be grateful for. And I am grateful for each of you. Thank you. I'll end today with a prayer for the world, for the remembering and the becoming. A great pulse that moves through stone and seed, through ancestor breath and I think I'm still here. To go back to that. A great pulse that moves through stone and seed, through ancestor breath and unborn dreams. We gather at the edge of this moment to remember. We remember the names that were never written, the languages burned, the songs forbidden, the lands renamed by mouths that did not know them. We remember the ones who lit fires without matches, who carried freedom in their bodies, even as they were caged, hunted, and erased. And we say, we see you. We say we carry you. We say we will not let the forgetting win. Let this prayer be a bridge between the sacred and the silenced, between the broken and the rebuilding, between the mountain and the movement. We speak now to the waters, cleanse the grief to the winds, to carry the truth to the fire, to burn the illusion into the earth, to ground us in right action. May the systems built on stolen breath crumble beneath the truth. May the hearts that were hardened by empire soften in awakening. And may the children yet to come inherit a world that was worth and is worth fighting for. And may we, the descendants of disruption, the midwives of memory, the keepers of flame, rise in reverence and resistance. Because this world was not given to us to own. It was entrusted to us to remember, to reshape, and return to the sacred. So may it be so, may it be soon, and may we be ready.